Welcome, Esri. Good afternoon. I hope everyone's well rested from all the parties last night. I'm Bernard, and I'm going to talk about how to take or grow your startup to the next level, right? But first of all, a little bit about me. I'm a distribution hacker in residence, which is basically a marketer in residence at 500 Startups. You, of course, have heard of 500 Startups. We do a lot of early stage investments all around the world, and I get the pleasure of helping each one of the portfolio companies, not each, but a select few portfolio companies with growth, marketing, sales, and analytics. Also, I co-founded Mushi Labs, which started as a consultancy in digital marketing services and is now, we're trying to scale around building our own product. So I resonate a lot with kind of the early stage ideation, how to get your first 100 customers, and all that stuff. So how to take your startup to the next level? I figure I would start from the earliest of stages, right? You have an idea. How do you take your idea to a minimal viable product? And then I would cover the next things, which are how to grow that MVP to your first 10, 20, 30 sorts of customers. So your startup needs a few fundamentals, in my opinion, right? You need to have a business model. You need to look at the market size. And you need to think about your customer acquisition, right? Where are your first customers going to come from? This is an example of a startup that I was working on about 2 years ago, which was a coaching platform for competitive gaming, right? We wanted to help kids get better at playing video games because esports is becoming more of a thing. We built this marketplace, and we didn't really think about the business model. We didn't think about how we were going to make money, and that was a huge mistake, right? We said, we'll figure out the business model later. We'll build it, we'll get our users, but no, I mean, you should think about it and figure it out now. The reason why that's important is because you need to really think about your unit economics, right? Like, if you're building a business, your business needs to make money. So we had like some coaches, and they would be charging their students some amount of money. Here's an example of a $20 an hour session, and we said, okay, well, we're gonna take 10% of that transaction. So that'd be like $2 for every coaching session that happened. The next thing to consider is, well, how many of those transactions can we possibly get per month, per year, right? How big is that actual market? And when you do the math, right, and we say to pay kind of the startup costs and our basic salaries in America, we would need $10,000 per month. And to achieve $10,000 per month, we would need 5,000 paying coaching sessions per month, right? And this is 14-year-olds who are trying to get better at a computer game. They have no money, and the 18-year-olds who are teaching these like students, they also have no money. So if you're not tackling a big market or a market that doesn't have much money, then you're screwed, right? Like, you're not going to be able to build a business out of it. So either you have a large number of people who will pay some small amount of money, right? This is kind of more like Spotify and Uber. Or you have a few number of people, and this is like more of your B2B, right? They'll pay you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per month. But there are, 5,000, 10,000 of these companies that you can target. So customer acquisition, right? When you're in the early stages, you have to have some hypotheses about where you're going to get your first customers. Here's a spectrum of, you could do Facebook, you could get them through Meetup, you could email your past or current relationships. But validate that that channel and that customer acquisition strategy is going to work, and close your first customer as soon as possible. The reason why this is extremely important besides, of course, like generating revenue, is that you know people already bought your product or service, right? You can sleep better at night when people are actually paying you for your product. It's no longer just an idea or a dream, right? You provide enough value to your target market such that they're saying, I'm willing to give you, X amount of my hard-earned dollars to your product or your service. And last but not least, with early stage startups, right? Morale and momentum are the lifeblood of your startup. If you're not making money or, if you're not very motivated by your growth or your early stage, that's how early stage startups die, right? They die from suicide rather than any other sort of reason. Well, mostly suicide, right? They say, okay, well, we built this thing and we're bleeding money and I can't pay my rent, I can't pay myself, I don't have any food, and you're like, screw it, let's move on. So that's from your idea to your MVP. And then I wanted to cover some practical advice from your MVP to your first 10 or 100 customers, right? Namely, you're going to be asking for help, you're going to always be hustling, and you're going to persist, because startup doesn't just happen overnight, right? The Angry Birds developer developed 40 games before Angry Birds became the phenomenon that it was. So no one initially cares about what you're working on, right? Let's just get that out there. If no one initially cares about what you're working on, then how do you make them care? Well, you ask for help. And typically your first 100 or 10 or 20 customers, they're going to be your friends, they're going to be your family, and they're going to be fools, right? People who just kind of buy into your product, your service. And it's a lot like what Marvin mentioned. If you're a non-technical co-founder, your network is kind of your net worth, right? How many people who can you get your product in front of to sell them on, your service? So tell everyone you know what you're working on, right? When I was first getting started with the business I was building, I took all of my contacts that I had on LinkedIn, and I either messaged everyone or deleted them, because I'm like, I don't remember who this person is. And I emailed 600-700 people saying, hey, I'm working on this new thing. We haven't caught up for a while. And a lot of the asking for your friends and your family, it's going to be a waste of time, but you never know. So here's an example of an email that I was sending to my network. I'd be like, hey, Happy New Year. How are things going with you? What have you been up to? Since we've last chatted, I've been working on these sorts of things, and I'd love to catch up with you. Don't be a dick, right? Be respectful of everyone's time and their resources, and you never know what happens, right? So the reason why I'm at 500 today is because I had a connection who was at 500, and I sent that exact email to him, and he's like, hey, Bernard, thanks for following up and checking in. We're actually organizing this thing. Would you be interested in helping out, right? And that was just purely a random chance, and here I am now. Also, this is the same sort of email, right? Happy holidays, haven't heard from you in a while. How's your business going? How is search engine optimization coming along? And that's how we were able to close one of our first few customers. He's like, hey, let's meet up for coffee, let's see what you're working on, and done. Let's work together. The world tends to provide when you ask for help. So always be hustling, right? A day in the life of a startup is that there's always so many fires going on, and you really need to prioritize which fire you should be putting out. But that's part of the fun and the excitement, right? You run your own thing, and you are the boss. And as a result, you have to push this little startup up the mountain. But I say it beats the corporate sort of hamster wheel, right? You're not just spinning in like motion and like a cog in the system. So even if you tell the world, right, this is a bunch of like outreach that I've currently was doing like a month ago, and none of these, like only like 6% of these people like responded. So it's not going to be easy, but for every 100 or so like emails or attempts that you make, you probably get like a 5 to 10% like response rate for people who want to hear or like learn about your service. So, I, following up, like as a non-technical co-founder who's building relationships and networking, that's the name of the game, right? You always follow up. My rule of thumb is that if someone has not told me yes or no, then I'm going to continue to ping them until they say no, stop emailing me. Or like it was a 7-drip sequence and like end it there. So you learn what works by learning what doesn't work, right? You try a lot of things, and it's not a one-size-fits-all sort of game, right? Like for different industries, for different business models, targeting different sorts of individuals, each tactic and each experiment is just going to be different. So you gotta continue moving on, right? I started my entrepreneurial career in 2007 when I was in college. I played online poker. I made a little over $120,000 during college. I bought a restaurant, which is the Dickey's Barbecue Pit. That went out of business in 13 months. Then I worked on some projects ranging from, an educational video on demand sort of service, and then some stupid, like, funny image thing, a mobile CRM, then a marketplace for, like, baked goods. Then I joined a YC venture-backed startup because I was like, screw it, I don't know anything about startups. I'm gonna go learn how the most notable startups are doing. And I realized from the inside that, they don't know, right? Everyone's just trying to figure it out. So I left there, then I launched the coaching platform for competitive gaming, which has no market or business model. I worked on an order management tool, which similarly had a business model but no market. And now I'm doing Mushi Labs. But who knows, right? We'll see what's going to work. You just have to be in it in the long run. So keep on keeping on. Startup is a journey, and this is the Digital Freedom Festival.